adjourn. And I call the member for Holt.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, 4 years ago, on the 23rd of September 2014, my staff and I were leaving this building. It had been a long day. It was cold and dark. The conditions matched my mood. Part of this mood was because of my conviction that this country would experience a terrorist attack. In fact, earlier in the year, on July 14th, in this House, I stated that eventually and inevitably in this country an event will occur on this soil of the magnitude of the Bali event or just a terrorism event. Just. On that fateful evening, I knew the security level had just been raised to high by ASIO and the government. I knew our agencies were gravely concerned about ISIL and the numbers of those in Australia influenced by this insidious group. I also knew that ISIL had just issued a fatwa which called for the death of soldiers and civilians in countries including Australia, and that Western intelligence agencies were attempting to assess the impact of this fatwa. They wouldn't have to wait long. I also knew our intelligence and security authorities had just conducted raids in Sydney and Melbourne which sought to disrupt an ISIL plot to abduct and kill random members of the public. And on that night, as we were leaving, a highly regarded journalist rang my staff member on his mobile phone to advise him of an incident at the Endeavour Hills police station. It had involved the serious wounding of 2 police officers in what appeared to be a terrorist attack. Given that the police station was some 300 metres from where I had previously lived for many years, this literally struck particularly close to home. I went back upstairs to my office, and as the evening unfolded, we learned the true horror of the event that had taken place, that a young man aged 18 had attempted to attack and kill 2 counter-terrorism officers. Both officers were seriously wounded. One officer suffered life-threatening injuries, and the other officer, though seriously injured himself, had shot and killed the young man, a young radicalised man who was carrying out an ISIL-inspired terrorist attack. And after that dark night, we learnt that this was one of the first ISIL-inspired attacks outside of the Middle East, in fact the first of its type in the Western world. And as a consequence of that attack and its aftermath, the Anzac Day plots, the Lindt Cafe siege and other events, the security landscape of our country has changed forever. Australia had that night, Speaker, its first bitter taste of ISIL-inspired attacks. ISIL attacks continued not just in this country, with the Paris attacks in November 2015, the Brussels bombings of March 2016, the Manchester Arena bombing in May 2017, and even recently the July 18 Pakistan bombings that killed 149 people. But this first attack, the Endeavour Hills police station attack, was thwarted by the bravery of the 2 officers, particularly Officer A. The shot fired by Officer A literally ricocheted throughout the world. It demonstrated the deadly intent and reach of ISIL and their resolve to kill and terrorise police officers, even in countries like Australia. It also indicated that deadly force would be used to protect our country's interest, and it was by Officer A. Today, after these 4 years in which our world has changed, I contacted, I'm proud to say, my 2 friends, Officers A and B, and asked them if there's anything they'd like to say to this House and to the Australian people 4 years on. Officer A sent me the following message. I am proud of my service to my country and equally proud of the continued dedication of my former colleagues within the National Joint Counter-Terrorism teams who continue to thwart terrorist attacks here to keep Australia as safe as possible, and I acknowledge the contribution of the community in working alongside police and the intelligence sector to keep thwarting those who wish to do our great country and our interests harm. When I reflect on it, if I was asked, would I give my blood, sweat and tears again to keep this nation safe, then the answer is a resounding absolutely. Our soldiers, our sailors and Air Force have performed with distinction in operations abroad and peacekeeping missions. When it comes to keeping the public safe from harm, then my small part was to hold the thin blue line, and I'm happy to have done that. On the cusp of National Police Remembrance Day, I pay tribute to all Australian policing colleagues who paid the ultimate price, whether feloniously slain or killed on duty. Policing will always endure, he says, the challenges thrown at us by criminals and terrorists, because that's why we police. We protect good from evil. Mr Speaker, Officer A received the Victorian Police Valour Award and AFP Medal for Bravery, both of the highest honour both organisations have for bravery. Officer B received an AFP Medal of Bravery and a Medal for Courage from the Victorian Police. Mr Speaker, as long as I remain in this place, I resolve each September to remind the public of the heroism and bravery of Officers A and B and to ensure we never forget their sacrifice, and that of our police and security agencies to keep us safe, particularly on that dark, dark September night.